Alrighty, yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. DDG94, back with another reaction video today. We finna react to 10 LOL TNA moments that left wrestling fans baffled. There's a lot from TNA that left me baffled, which led me to not watching this goddamn company no more. But without further ado, let's get right into it.
When wrestling fans talk about the history of TNA, it's not usually to talk about classic matches. What really sticks in people's minds are the moments that make you wonder how the company has managed to stay in business for as long as it has. Today, we're counting down 10 ridiculous TNA moments that left wrestling fans speechless. When TNA aired its first ever show in June 2002, they had the chance to make a great first impression and establish themselves as a serious alternative to WWE. The WWE Tag Team division had gone downhill since the glory days of the Attitude Era, and TNA could have seized the opportunity to excel in this area and present a great tag team scene, but instead they opened their debut show with the Flying Elvises. Jimmy Yang, George Estrada and Sonny Siaki might have had some in-ring talent, but their gimmick made them look extremely dumb. A little bit later on the same show, we got introduced to the Johnsons, two guys dressed in full-body, flesh-coloured suits that made them look like literal penises. And then there was the Rainbow Express, the world's gayest tag team. With WWE's tag division on life support, TNA could have made a real statement on their first ever show, but instead they served up some of the most ridiculous tag team gimmicks in wrestling history. It was just a month later when they broadcast a dwarf masturbating in a trash can. Puppet was a wrestler who was a part of TNA's short-lived Little Person division. He was also sex-obsessed and, more generally, a psychopath. In fact, Puppet the Psycho Dwarf was actually his full name. In one backstage segment, fans were treated to a scene where interviewer Goldilocks caught Puppet jerking off inside a trash can. He even offered her some of his porridge. Safe to say, the Little Person division didn't last for very long.
What the segment?
TNA tried to reinvent the Battle Royal, one of wrestling's tried and tested gimmick matches. Spoiler alert, it didn't need reinventing. The reverse Battle Royal was like an actual Battle Royal, but flipped on its head. In a normal Battle Royal, all of the wrestlers start in the ring, and the last one to stay in the ring wins. But in TNA's version, a dozen or so wrestlers started brawling outside the ring, all trying to climb in. The first few to make it into the ring then competed in a regular Battle Royal, with the winner getting a shot at the world title. Of course, it was as terrible as it sounds. Fans were left laughing as the wrestlers awkwardly pretended that they couldn't just roll into the ring. But what's really crazy is that nobody backstage realised how awful this gimmick was, and they ended up doing 3 of them. The electrified steel cage match is another awful gimmick that made fans question if TNA was being booked by an idiot. Yes.
Yeah, TNA has some questionable. Yeah, TNA definitely has some questionable shit.
Yes, it was, by the way. The match was featured at the Lockdown pay-per-view, where Team 3D faced off against LAX for the Tag Team Championship. On paper, it sounded dangerous and exciting, but if you've ever seen WCW's Chamber of Horrors match from 1991, you know how this was destined to go. Instead of an actual electrified cage, TNA relied on hilariously bad special effects to sell the gimmick. Every time a wrestler touched the cage, the arena lights would flicker on and off, and an electric sound effect played over the speakers. Rather than gasping with excitement, you could almost hear the fans in the arena breaking into laughter. What should have been an intense final showdown between these two top tag teams ended up being 15 minutes of total non-stop nonsense. In 2009, TNA decided to have Samoa Joe be kidnapped by ninjas. Joe was feuding with the main event Mafia at the time. He was suddenly attacked by a group of masked men. They threw him into a van and sped off, leaving everyone completely baffled. Fans wanted to know why this had happened and who these mysterious ninjas were. No one had a clue, and as the weeks went on, it became clear that neither did TNA. When Joe finally reappeared, he was now aligned with the main event Mafia, having apparently switched sides, but there was still no explanation about the ninjas. They just pretended that the whole thing never happened. The year was 2010, and TNA's Knockouts division had been one of the few things that the company did better than WWE. But here, instead of showcasing the women's talent in the ring, they gave us this convoluted and embarrassing gimmick. In the Lockbox Challenge, Angelina Love, Tara, ODB and Hamada faced Velvet Sky, Madison Rayne, Lacey Von Erich and Daphne. It was an 8-woman tag team elimination match, but with a twist. Instead of wrestling for a title, they were fighting for keys that opened boxes that contained different prizes. These included the Knockouts Championship, Tara's pet tarantula, a contract for a future title shot, and a mandatory striptease. Yes, one unlucky woman would be forced to perform a striptease in front of the fans. Angelina Love ended up winning the Knockouts Championship. She became the champion, of course, not by beating anybody in the ring, but by simply opening a box. Velvet Sky won the match contract and Tara won her precious spider back. It looked like Daphne was going to have to perform the striptease, but she was interrupted by Lacey Von Erich, who did it instead, because she was a slut, according to Taz on commentary. In just one segment, TNA managed to turn its women's division into a complete joke. At a time when TNA was desperate for ratings, the last thing the company needed was for people to start turning the channel over before the show had even properly started. It was in 2010 when Eric Bischoff treated the audience to a self-indulgent performance at the start of Impact that accomplished absolutely nothing. Bischoff was supposedly mocking Jeff Jarrett, who was known for using a guitar as a weapon, of course, but this segment didn't add any real value to the storyline that was going on between the men. It was a head-scratching decision by TNA, and the fans were left wondering whether they were watching a wrestling show or a midlife crisis. And in reality, Bischoff wasn't even really playing the damn thing. Next, we need to talk about the time that TNA decided to give Abyss superpowers. Yes, they thought that it would be a good idea to turn hardcore monster Abyss into some kind of superhero, all thanks to Hulk Hogan's WWE Hall of Fame ring. Hogan gifted Abyss his ring, claiming that it had the power of Hulkamania contained within it, and it would turn him into an unstoppable force. What we actually got was Abyss running around like a Hulk Hogan superfan while treating the ring like a mystical artifact that gave him superhuman strength. During one segment, Abyss literally punched a hole through the ring, which Ric Flair ended up falling into. In the years before, Abyss was one of only a few stars that TNA created themselves, and he'd been a decent hardcore wrestler who was pretty damn over with the fans too, but this nonsense turned him into a comedy character, and it turned out that the only power that the Hall of Fame ring had was the power to make viewers turn the channel over. It was October 2013 and Hulk Hogan was about to leave TNA. His arrival in 2010 had been hyped up like he was the second coming of Christ, But 3 years later, his exit couldn't have been handled any worse. Dixie Carter had genuinely thought that Hogan was going to save the company, but of course, he didn't. In fact, his influence did more harm than good. In his final appearance for the company, Dixie begged Hogan to stay, even grabbing onto his leg like he was the only thing holding the company together. And quite frankly, this made TNA look pathetic. Fans were left wondering how Dixie thought this embarrassing display was a good idea, acting like Hogan was still the saviour of the company when he'd done nothing but hurt them. And behind the scenes, TNA was in a total mess, both creatively and financially. A lot of the blame was down to Dixie being an incompetent manager and how she allowed Hogan and Eric Bischoff to run roughshod over the company. So, in a way, this image was the perfect metaphor for everything wrong with the company at the time, and it really proved that Dixie still didn't see the damage that Hogan had done. TNA has baffled fans plenty of times, but few moments.
Why? Why did they do this to Orlando Jordan? Why? 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 Why?
Oh my God, bro.
Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass on, boy. You get your goddamn ugly ass on.
Can top Orlando Jordan's weird entrance from 2010. He lowered from the ceiling, covered in yellow caution tape. It was a really weird sight that left viewers wondering, what the f*** am I watching? Considering that Jordan had been part of JBL's cabinet in WWE, this character couldn't have been any further away from that. Obviously, TNA were playing up to his sexuality in order to try and get him over as a heel, but as usual, they completely missed the mark. It wasn't shocking in a good way, it was just rubbish.
Why? Why did they do that? Why? TNA just... y'all wonder why TNA is in the state that it's in right now. Between what they did to AJ Styles and all this garbage, yeah, it's understandable why TNA is where it is right now. But anyway, so that's just gonna about do it for this one. I will see you all in the next video. Till then, peace out.